Hey everyone, we're gonna do smoke 2 Boston butt pork shoulders today. These are ready. They're already brined. If you've never brined anything, it's extremely easy to do. With the brine and with the rub and everything like that, I usually go with the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So with the brine, all that was in there was some brown sugar, some kosher salt, and then a few Italian seasonings, flavorings, things like that. I also put some garlic in there, and I did put some actual rosemary in there as well. Don't know how much that really affects it. Really what you're worried about is keeping the moisture in the meat. So the sugar and the salt are the most important. I essentially just went and bought a big bucket, cleaned it out, put a couple gallons of the brine in there. You have to warm that brine up a little bit so the sugar and the salt all can all mix with the water and dissolve in the water. Then you let it cool, put some ice in here, put the couple gallons of brine in there, and then put your pork butt or your turkey or whatever it is you want to brine. So easy on the brine. So right now we're going to do the rub. And again, I keep it about as simple as possible, but I do have one ingredient that's a little bit different. So first we start with some brown sugar. I just want to kind of eyeball it and measure it out for how much you're going to have to rub and cover. Next thing we're going to do, we're just going to do 2 chili powders. Okay, just cheap chili powder. We're going to do an onion powder, and we're going to do a garlic powder. The one thing that I do kind of like to cook with, it's something that's a little unexpected, and it's also something that people will have difficulty identifying in this type of food that we're going to be preparing, and that's good old-fashioned Old Bay. I use it on everything. I do it on my wings. I do it on my pork butts, obviously. You know, it's good with just about everything as far as meat. Don't do it much with beef. I probably wouldn't do beef, but pork, poultry, it's perfect. Just gonna put our hands in here, mix it up. About the best tools you have in the kitchen. They're on the end of both arms. Okay. Then we just got a little bit of a look here. One of the things that you'll notice from the chili powder is you're going to get a cumin taste to it. Cumin is pretty much the main ingredient in chili powder and in like your taco seasonings. But also the thing that the chili powder does is it gives you a little bit of color too. A little bit of color to what they call the bark. Then we're just going to liberally rub this pork butt. You're essentially creating, again, what I just referred to as the bark. Now, the cooking method we're going to use today is we're going to use an Orion smoker. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point where we're putting the meat on. But why I mention it now is that the Orion is actually a cooker, less than a smoker, but it can be used to smoke, and I'll show you how to do that. And the reason I'm saying that is you don't get a lot of good bark with the Orion. It's one of the criticisms of that cooking method, but it doesn't bother me, especially in this situation. Now, it might be a little bit different if you're doing brisket or if you're doing poultry, where you want the bark and the skin is something that is the texture of that matters more in those scenarios. I mean, in this, all we're going to do is pull this apart and put it on sandwiches. Of course, we want to maintain a bark as much as we can, but it's really not as important with something like a Boston butt. So, as you can see, we've got those rubbed, ready to go, and they're ready to go on. So we're going to go prepare the smoker, and we'll talk a little bit about the smoker then. Okay, we're outside now. We're going to talk a little bit about the Orion cooker smoker. It is the most efficient outdoor charcoal cooking process that I've seen. And this isn't an advertisement for the Orion by any means, but it's definitely a source that I use quite a bit for outdoor cooking, especially smoking or longer term items. So you can do several things with the Orion. One of the things you can do is, you can't really see, but there's 3 little holes here on the sides. You can put in rib rack hangers. We won't be doing that today, obviously. We can cover that on another episode. But this is completely charcoal based. However, there's not any charcoal on the inside. So what you do, you can see back here, I've got my chimney going. If you are not if you are an outdoor charcoal user and you are not using a chimney, I would suggest that you get one and use one. They're much more efficient and much more reliable. A lot of times you hit that charcoal with the lighter fluid and it goes out, or it doesn't process correctly. But with the chimney, it's almost always foolproof. Put some newspaper under there, fill it with charcoal. 10 minutes later, charcoal's ready. So the inside of the cooker, I don't know if you'll be able to see very well, but the inside of the cooker it's just a barrel. It's just an empty barrel. But in the bottom of it, we do have a drip pan. So put the drip pan in. Some situations you would put fluid in there to keep the meat moist. In this situation, I do not do that. I don't do that with almost any of the meats that I put in here. Then you have a couple grates that go in, but before we do that, we've got to interject our smoking flavor. What we're going to do today, since we're doing pork pork butt, we are going to use apple. Go with apple wood, the chips. Despite the fact that this is going to be in here for hours, it really doesn't take much. All it is you just fill the barrel around that drip pan. So just that little area that's around the inside of the drip pan, you're gonna put in your wood chips just around the bottom. I mean, in total, I'm probably putting in, I don't know, maybe 2 cups, 3 cups of wood chips. Just gonna get it lined in there around that drip pan. If a few of them end up in the drip pan, that's fine. Again, we're not putting any liquid in there. There will be plenty of liquid, rendered fat, that type of thing in the drip pan when we're done. But that's to help with cleanup, so you don't have that in the bottom of your Orion. So we've got drip pan in here. We've got our wood chips in here. We're going to put in 2 grates, okay, because we have 2 Boston butts that we're using. You can put in up to 3. There's actually 3 areas for grates in here. We're only going to use 2 today. We're going to use the 2 top levels. So as soon as our charcoal's ready, we'll fill it up. We'll put the butts on, and I'll show you kind of how the Orion works. Okay, you can see our charcoal is no longer smoking. It means it's ready to go. We do also have our 2 Boston butts out here. They're both been rubbed and resting. It's actually a term, resting. I recommend, especially with beef and pork, I recommend that you almost always try to get those up closer to a room temperature before you cook them. It just cooks more even, and it's easier to cook once it's room temperature, rather than the inside being so much colder than the outside once it's on the grill. But it's not mandatory. So this is how we prepare the Orion for smoking. We're going to take our charcoal here, very hot, and then the already burning charcoal, we're just going to kind of fill it around here. Make sure we got at least some orange coals all over. I'm going to put a few right up here in the top. We got quite a few left here. Try to evenly disperse this around. And there we go. We'll go ahead now and put our pork on. One ready to go. Perfect. And put our grate back on again. put our second shoulder on. One of the other things I want to do is mark the time. It is exactly 2:30. It's 2:30 p.m. We are putting these on. We will mark the time when we take them off. The one thing about the Orion is it is a convection cooker. So we've got heat at the bottom. It's of course rising. Then you have heat at the top, and it is pushing that heat back down, and you're essentially getting a convection cooking going on in there. And then we have also, of course, our wood chips in there that are going to give us the flavor. The one thing with the Orion that I always warn people about is you can cook meat down to where it is like mush in this. You can ruin the meat. You can leave it in there too long. I've done it before, especially when it's smaller cuts, like pork chops. Put them in there, cook them for an hour, and you get it out. It's almost like you can't eat it. It's like it's just falling apart. So there is a little bit that you have to watch out with. So we've got those hot coals in there. We're going to go ahead and fill it up with cold coals. And you do want to fill it up, especially with something like this. We were cooking, you know, a thawed chicken or something like that. Might not require as much. I mean, we're cooking 2 7 to 8 pound pork shoulders. Even though the Orion is, as I mentioned, extremely efficient, it's still going to take us a couple hours at least. Now, took us a little bit of work to get here, right? You got the charcoal going, you got to have the Orion set up and cleaned, you got to get your pork shoulder rubbed and everything. But now's the point where we set it and forget it. It's in there, it's going. You can put a probe in there, of course. Orion has a couple little spots that you can run a thermometer probe in and out. Even when I've done it though, the lid is not so tight that it won't let a cord run out. So I've put a probe in there before and ran a cord out and like set it on the table or what have you. But I've just done this so many times. I know it's going to be 2 to 3 hours to do this. And I will use a temperature probe before I pull it. When I take the lid off later, we'll check it and make sure it's where it needs to be. But honestly, when we pull it off of there later, we're probably going to know, because you can probably reach in there and pull the bone directly out of the meat. So we will be back to the Orion here in a couple hours. Okay, so while our pork is cooking, we're going to go ahead and start making a couple sides. What's the best sides you can possibly make with pulled pork? Well, I don't know about the best, but certainly the two classics are coleslaw and baked beans. That's what we're going to do. Now, to be honest with you, I did debate on truly making the beans, getting beans, actually rendering them down, cooking them, getting them soft, and then going through that. But I decided against it in the interest of time. I'm kind of running out of time today. I got a little bit of a time limit on the folks that are waiting on this meal eventually. So what I've done is I've taken two cast iron skillets, actually a 10-inch and an 8-inch. I only have one 10-inch, so I had to go a 10-inch and an 8-inch. I've taken 2 strips of thick cut bacon. These were actually cherry wood smoked. It doesn't matter which you use. Bacon's bacon to me. And I've cooked them down in these pans. Now, I want my bacon in these baked beans to be bacon. I don't want it to be some, flimsy, chewy, half-cooked bacon. I want, when you bite into bacon in these baked beans, I want you to know you're eating bacon. So we're going to crisp these up really well. We'll let these crisp. Looks like they're pretty much about done. So pull those out, put them on a plate with a paper towel for later. Yep, those look good. And then we're going to use this bacon grease and everything that's rendered off of this fat as our basis for putting together our beans. Bacon probably smells just as good as it tastes, I would imagine. So we want those smoky, salty, sweet flavors and notes from the bacon. We want to keep that right in here, and that's why we've left these on the heat. First thing we're going to do is take a medium onion, and we will dice it, and we're going to put it right in this bacon grease. Good, there we go. It's half of one, so we'll put that in one of these. There we go. Turned my heat way down, but any of you that know, cast iron skillet, doesn't matter if you turn the heat down, it's not going away in that skillet. So we'll just kind of toss these onions around a little bit. Make sure they don't burn, but we definitely want them to get translucent. And I'm actually going to pull that off of the heat for now. Plenty of heat there on that one. So we will dice up our other half. A lot of recipes call for different onions. I'm just going with a standard white onion. Some of the recipes call for sweet, some of them call for yellow onions, some of them call for red onions. Like I said, I'm just going with a white onion today. I think we'll be fine with that. When it comes to using cast iron skillet and, cooking onions down and getting your baked beans going, I don't know what it is. It's probably just a mental thing. I love to use a wooden spoon for this. So we're going to get these onions to where they're down and not too crunchy. I've actually seen some people prefer an underdone onion in their baked beans. Again, giving them a little bit of a crunch, kind of like we talked about with the bacon. Let these cook down. We will pull this one back over onto the heat. And we've got two going here. Cast iron, really the main reason I'm using it in this application is because I am truly going to bake these beans. Kind of lost that, haven't we? We pull it out of a can and throw it in a saucepan on top of the oven. We've kind of lost the baked bean portion of that. Today we are going to bake these. We're going to bake them in a little different fashion than you're probably used to seeing, but we'll cover that when we get there. So what are we going to put in these baked beans? Well, I just went and got regular old pork and beans and tomato sauce, okay? So that's obviously going to be our main ingredient. We're also going to put in some ketchup. We're going to put in some molasses. We're going to put in some brown sugar. We're going to put in a little fresh minced garlic. Then, of course, we've got kosher salt and fresh cracked pepper. We'll put all that in together, and we'll see what we come out with. Looks like these onions are about done. Looks like everything's going good. Again, you can see there's a lot of rendered fat in here. I don't know how well you can see that. I mean, there's quite a bit of bacon grease and bacon fat down in here. Why I point that out, some recipes will call for like a pound of bacon or whatever. Remember, I did 2 thick cut strips in here. I feel like it is plenty for what we are needing it for. So let's start putting in the rest of our ingredients. First and foremost, of course, we're going to put in beans. Open this can. It's giving me a little bit of trouble for some reason. Might have to use a different opener. I don't know why that's giving me trouble. I don't know why that won't open for me. Let's see a different opener here. There we go. Finally. Okay. And then we're just going to dump it in here. Dump these beans all in here. Yep. There you go. Now, one thing that I am admittedly bad about is measuring. I eyeball just about everything. So I will try to give you approximately what I'm putting in these, but you'll get the idea of at least the ingredients. So first thing we're going to do, plain old ketchup. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, a cup, maybe half cup brown sugar. I'm using light brown sugar. It does not matter if you use dark brown sugar. If you do not know the difference between light brown sugar and dark brown sugar, so brown sugar is white sugar with molasses. That's all it is. So dark brown sugar is white sugar with more molasses than light brown sugar. So in our application today, really shouldn't make a difference. Let's get that other one going. Yeah, a little bit of heat there. Don't need much heat, to be honest with you. We're going to do not know why I'm having so much trouble with these cans. Okay, sorry about that. I have no idea why I'm having so much trouble with that. Okay, so put in our other can of beans. And heat really isn't important at this point. You can leave a little heat on there if you want, but we're going to be baking them, of course. So again, I don't know, maybe a cup or so of ketchup. Again, half cup or so of brown sugar. We'll put in some garlic. I don't know, maybe 2 cloves each, something like that. A little bit of fresh garlic. Of course, some kosher salt. Some fresh cracked pepper. Good. And then we're just going to mix this all together. No, I haven't forgot about our bacon. That's coming still. Just mix it. And then, of course, pretty much our last ingredient, we want to put in some molasses. Maybe half a cup each. We do have one more ingredient we're going to put in this, but it's kind of a tricky one. We'll cover that in a moment. It's not really an ingredient, but I consider it a flavor enhancer. And that's it. We will now, after this is all mixed and ready to go, I will meet you back out at the grill. Okay, so we're out at our charcoal grill, and this is where we're going to bake our beans. Might sound like an advanced technique. Trust me, it's not. It's extremely easy. Now, I have a side smoker box. I use that for airflow and smoke. If you don't have one, don't worry, you don't need it. What I do is I come into my side smoker box, and I put in some preheated charcoal that I had started in the chimney a little while back. So we're going to put quite a bit in there, and then I am going to put a little bit actually in the box here, but I'm still going to make it indirect heat, meaning I'm not going to put our baked beans directly over these hot coals. I'm going to put them on this end, Then I'll kind of show you how the airflow and the heat flow along with the smoke work in this scenario. Put these back on. Get our baked beans now. Carefully placing them in here. Doesn't matter where the handle's pointing, you're not going to be able to grab it with your bare hand after it's in here for a while anyway. Just make sure they fit in there. Put both of our baked beans in here. We'll test. Make sure this is going to shut. Might have to put one on the top level, which is just fine. It's not going to change anything. So put one on the top, one on the bottom. It looks like that's going to work. Then we used apple wood, remember, to smoke the pork. In this case, I don't have apple wood chips. I actually have a couple larger pieces of apple wood, thanks to my father-in-law. Thank you, Mark. And I have some more of this. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a few of these on the hot coals and just let them start smoking. I'll set one or two of them aside. We can put some more on later. Actually set two of those aside. We'll leave those on. Now how the airflow works here, there's a hole here that goes into the main chamber. I shut this door, and then there's air vent on this end. So you can open and close this air vent to control your airflow. And so the air is going to come in here, it's going to grab this smoke, then it's going to come into the main part here, and then it's going to pull that smoke out our chimney. So the smoke is going to flow through right across our beans and up through our chimney. So essentially, as I said, we're going to bake our beans on our charcoal grill. Now, if the charcoal starts getting down too low, in this scenario, we would add some more charcoal, maybe an hour from now or so. We'll see how the smoke goes, see how the charcoal goes, and we'll just and you can see already, smoke's coming through, looking good. And again, this is another scenario where we're going to kind of set this and forget it. I mean, we've got cast iron skillets in there. We've got beans that we need to bake. We're going to let them bake for a couple hours. They should be done just about the time that our pork's done. So, on to coleslaw. Okay, so pork's on, baked beans are on, and we're back in the kitchen. Before we get started, that can of beans truly has it out for me. And I came in to clean up my workstation, threw the can away. It cut me. That's awesome. The other thing, I told you guys that if you didn't have a side smoker to not worry, and then I didn't tell you what to do. So if you don't have a side smoker, even if you have like a charcoal kettle grill or something like that, the whole thing is just make sure that you're not putting your baked beans on direct heat. So put the charcoal over to the side, and then put your baked beans on the other side. Just don't make sure it's not direct heat because it will burn the beans, even if it's in cast iron. That's the whole thing. Smoke it on the side, whatever. Just make sure we're doing indirect. So now we're going to go to coleslaw. Coleslaw is extremely easy to make. As a matter of fact, once I show you how to make the coleslaw dressing, you may decide to start making it on your own rather than buying those jars at the store. But no judgment there. I buy the jars all the time. What I've done, I've taken a medium to large head of cabbage, and we've chopped it up and sliced it up. So there's little, smaller pieces. And some of these you might want to look for. You want to make, when you get down into the core of the cabbage, there might be a few pieces that you want to pull out of here, okay? Other than that, I also put probably a quarter to a half a cup of diced carrots. You can slice them, dice them. You can use the peeler and peel them off. You can do whatever you want to do or however you want to do that today. I just diced them up. And that's all I have in here. You could do purple cabbage. You could do onion. You can do whatever you want to do in coleslaw. I'm going to make this, again, as I mentioned earlier, the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. This is it. This is all that it takes. Also, before I go, I'm making a very large meal. Because you can see I'm cooking 14 pounds of pork. I've got 2 big cans of the beans. I'm making a huge portion of coleslaw. So you can cut this recipe in half if you would prefer a quarter or whatever you want to do. 2 cups mayonnaise. Yes, mayonnaise, not Miracle Whip, not salad dressing, real deal. Add that. Again, I'm not the greatest with the measuring, but in this case, I do think it's important to at least stick to some sort of recipe. 2 cups mayonnaise. We're going to add, this is sugar. Let's call it 2 tablespoons. Let's call it 2 tablespoons of sugar. Of course, you can vary that however you, whatever your individual taste is. Then we're going to add half a cup of, this is apple cider vinegar. You can use, you could also use white wine, white sherry, something like that. You want it to be dry. What I mean by dry, of course, is that dry feeling in your mouth when you drink it. When you drink pure vinegar, you know, you have that dry feeling. You want whatever you're adding to be dry. So we're going to add the apple cider vinegar. And then the last piece adds a little more bite to it. We're going to put about half a lemon worth of juice in here. You want to roll your lemon, kind of crush some of those little pieces inside, get it nice and juicy for when you cut it. And then it's pretty simple. Cut it in half. You can look, see if there's any seeds that are going in there. I don't see many, if any. And we'll just squeeze some lemon juice in there. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. This is just a little bit of an effect on the recipe. Finally, of course, add our kosher salt. I don't know, maybe a teaspoon or 2. And cracked pepper. This can be a little bit debated. Some people like a lot of pepper on their coleslaw. You know, again, maybe a teaspoon or 2. We're just going to mix this all up. And looking like a pretty good consistency here. I'm going to get that real mayonnaise will clump on you sometimes. You want to make sure you're doing this. You might even want to get a whisk and actually whisk this a little bit to kind of thin it out. Make sure it doesn't have any mayonnaise lumps in it, for lack of a better term. It's a little thin, to be honest with you. We could probably add a little more mayonnaise, but as much cabbage as we have here, as much carrots and cabbage, I think we're probably going to be okay where we're at. So, take this mixture. We're just going to pour it directly on here, on our cabbage. Now you can make different types of dressings. There's buttermilk coleslaw dressing, there's sour cream coleslaw dressing. I'm sure people use yogurt, those types of things. Today we just went with the classic mayonnaise. And let's see, tongs. We're just gonna mix this up. If it seems a little light on the dressing, don't worry. Believe me, if the moisture will start to come out of this cabbage and out of these carrots eventually as it sets, especially if you're going to set this to chill it, and it will be plenty. As a matter of fact, if you look here, I know the lighting's a little different there. If you look at what we got here, it's looking pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good consistency, especially for the first 30 seconds that we've made it. The longer it sets, the more moisture it'll release. And in saying that, you should think about that when you're making your coleslaw. I like crunchy coleslaw. I tend to make my coleslaw right at the moment of serving. A little bit different today because we're kind of doing the video here and we got some other things going on. So we're going to make this and we're actually going to put it in the refrigerator and let it chill. First, we're going to taste it. I actually cut this by hand, so it might be a little bigger than what you're used to or what you like. You could use, food processor or whatever processor, just a simple handheld grater if you want to. So let's see what we got. A little tart. Nothing horrible, a little tart. We're just gonna add a little more sugar. It was close, it really was. I'm just gonna add another tablespoon or so of sugar. Mix this up again. And that'll be good. Okay, that's our coleslaw. We're gonna slap a lid on that, throw it in the refrigerator, let it chill. And then next time I see you guys, we will be pulling pork. See you in a few. Alrighty, so we're back outside. I've got both these in the shot here because we're going to be checking both. We're going to be checking the pork here in the Orion, which is the most important thing, and then we'll go over and take a look at our baked beans. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys too, and I even said I didn't forget the bacon. I really didn't. I crumbled it and I put it on top of the beans and then put the beans in there. So the bacon is in there. We've got a thermometer. You might not be able to tell from the video, but there is liquid running down the outside of the Orion. I can tell from my experience that I know when that's happening, we're getting close to the point of it being done. So let's take a look at what we got. As I said earlier, I'll actually need to bring you around to the other side so you can see this. As I said earlier, we would be able to pull the bone out. And you can see right here, this bone is sticking out of the meat. I could probably grab that with tongs and pull it out if I needed to. That is how close we are to this being done. And also a time mark, this is 4:30. So this has been going for 2 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and check the temperature here. Not quite where we need to be, but we're definitely getting there. We're about at 150. So we're gonna let it keep on rolling. It's probably gonna need another half hour or so. Let's go ahead and go over and check out our baked beans. I put in another couple pieces of wood. They've actually burned down. We've had plenty of smoke come through. Baked beans are here, hot to the touch. They are going good. So, we will be back in about a half hour or so, and it'll probably be time to get a plate. Okay, so we're back inside. We had an impromptu thought here. We got about a half hour, 45 minutes to kill. So, two things. First of all, a well-deserved adult beverage. Secondly, we're gonna make barbecue sauce. Put a saucepan over the heat, or on a burner, put it on probably medium high heat, and we got our ingredients. We've got tomato sauce, just canned tomato sauce. We've got 2 of these. We've got some soy sauce. I told you I wanted things kind of, or I didn't tell you, but if you know me, I like things kind of bold. Now I don't want it to be uncomfortable for anyone, but I want it to have a little bit of a kick. So we got some sriracha here. Straight, just normal yellow mustard. Surprise, surprise, brown sugar, more garlic, and the key, vinegar. Now, in this case, I will also opt out of using our kosher salt. I'm actually going to go with just regular Morton's iodized salt. Seems to have a stronger salt flavor to me. So certain recipes, popcorn is a good example. I will use the iodized salt. It's just a little stronger. And I want it to be a little bit strong for barbecue sauce because everything else in it is so overpowering. So we're going to put the 2 cans of tomato sauce in here. We're going to add, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 cloves of garlic. Maybe, let's call it a cup of brown sugar. A couple tablespoons of yellow mustard. Again, hit it with a little bit of sriracha. Let's not get crazy, but let's put a little in there. There's a lot of tomato sauce in there, so don't be scared of it, but let's not get crazy with it either. And let's see here. We've got a half cup measurement. Let's start with a half a cup of soy sauce. We may go more, but let's just look at it, taste it, see where we're at with it. Same thing with the vinegar. Let's go half cup on the vinegar. Oh, I almost forgot one of the most important ingredients. How did I almost forget that? We will need more molasses. What did we do with that? Sorry about that. Had to find the molasses. Well, let's call it a half cup too. Prefer a wooden spoon, but of course our wooden spoon is currently dirty, so we will just get this plastic spoon. And we're just gonna heat this up. Let it render down. Let everything in there get good and dissolved and going. I don't know if you can see the color. It is much darker now than it was when we just had the tomato in there. You can see some white flecks in there. The majority of that is garlic. Perfect. And it is looking, the color on that is looking fantastic, if you can't see that. It looks like barbecue sauce. Is exactly what it looks like. Just gonna let that heat. Now you're gonna be careful because you've got natural sugars in the tomato sauce. You've got sugar in everything here. Obviously brown sugar. You got sugar in the mustard. You got sugar in the sriracha. You got sugar in the molasses. There's probably even some sort of corn syrup in this soy sauce. So in saying that, this will burn very easily. It wants to burn. It wants to crystallize. It wants to turn into a darker, thicker sauce. We want it to get it in between. We don't want it to burn and be dark and hard, but we want it to render down and get a little bit thicker. Let some of that sugar really get in there and become more of a syrup. We would almost prefer this to be almost more of like the consistency of honey, sort of viscous. We're just going to let that go for a while. But right now we're going to go ahead and take a little taste just to see where we're at. Still getting a little too much tomato sauce. I'm actually gonna add about another quarter cup of the soy. And then we need sweet. We need more sweet. So we're gonna add some more barbecue sauce, more brown sugar, more molasses. Probably gonna end up being, I don't know, 2 cups of brown sugar and a cup of molasses when it's all said and done. Definitely more brown sugar. So another cup of brown sugar, another half cup molasses, and now we'll let this. That is looking much better. That is the consistency we're looking for. See that? See how that's getting slower coming out of there? That's what we want. Let this heat up. It'll release the garlic. It'll release the sugar. And that is looking pretty darn good, folks. Again, we want to use our salt, pepper, salt was probably a tablespoon. Seems like a lot. You have no idea how much salt is in our condiments. clean spoon, give it another taste. There it is. That is very good. Now, if you don't like soy sauce, you can always replace that with Worcestershire sauce. I'm gonna put a little more garlic in there. Again, not the greatest at measuring. Little of this, little of that. That's really it, guys. I'm gonna let that heat up. I'll let it heat up for a while until it's really warm. I mean, I don't want to get it to a boil or anything, but I want it to start showing some spots in there like it's wanting to boil. And then I'll take it off the heat and let it cool, and it'll thicken up even more. And that's our barbecue sauce. Quick shout out to Lancaster's Outer Belt Brewing.
Okay, so we've got our pork pulled. We've pulled it and chopped it. I like to pull my pork a little earlier than some people. I like to pull my pork at about 190 to 195 degrees. I kind of have a funny term. I like my meat to have a little fight to it. So if you like your meat softer and more, I guess, mushy in some ways, I know that's not a good term, and I don't mean it derogatory. If you like your meat softer, you want to take that to about 200 to 205, somewhere around in there. I pull mine at about 190, 195. Then you can see, so we've got our pork ready. Got it pulled. You can see this, the baked beans. I wish you could have a better visual of it. You can see around the edge where the smoke has kind of permeated the fat and sugar that's in here. You can see that the whole thing is kind of congealed. Just made it a little more viscousy, like we talked about with our barbecue sauce. Just a little thicker. Almost has more of like a honey type of feel to it. And then, of course, we've got our coleslaw. So, time to make a plate. Moment of truth. Nothing special with the bun. Just a standard Sunny bun. Take a little bit of our barbecue. Put it on our sandwich. Take a spoon here. Get us some of our, look at that. Look at me see me breaking through that top layer. Oh, that's the good stuff. You can see those little charred bits of bacon in there. That's what we're talking about. Oh, look at that bacon right there. Look at that. Take another spoon. Get us some coleslaw. Again, this is thick chopped coleslaw. I happen to like it that way. A little bit more to go on your fork. I'm not a person that likes to put my coleslaw on my sandwich. It's okay if you do. It's not something I enjoy. I'm going to use the same spoon here. It's not going to hurt anything. We're going to dip into our barbecue sauce. Ladle a little bit on our pork sandwich. Oh, look at that. Put that sandwich lid on there. You've got a classic barbecue. Hope you guys enjoyed. That was pulled pork shoulder, baked beans, homemade coleslaw. Join us next time. Here in a couple days, my daughter and I, Ezra, we're going to tackle a classic. In a couple days, we're going to try chicken noodle soup. A simple, but classic. You'll probably be surprised how easy it is to make and how much better it is than canned. Hope you enjoyed our meal today. And again, thanks for watching Cooking with Dad. Catch us next time. Chicken noodle soup. Thanks.